Hello everybody and welcome back to the Ash and Stone channel. My name is Chris and today we're off on a little bit of a side adventure. I've got a small campaign lined up that I'm really looking forward to in collaboration with Gaetano and the team at One Page Rules, who have very graciously supplied me with the files to print out the Saurian models for this campaign. So without further ado, let's get into the intro. The Dwarf King sits upon his throne of stone, and Kalana Heartwale returns to Tor Kelora in disgrace. She is given a chance to redeem herself. She is to accompany an expedition across the Anser Sea to the primordial Dread Mire, where she will aid in the recovery of various artifacts and spell components. The trip, however, is not uneventful. One of the ships is damaged in a storm, and the Elves are required to beach it along the periphery of the Dread Mire to repair it for the return crossing. Kalana is tasked with leading a small force to obtain what is required whilst the repairs are completed. Skirting the edge of the Dread Mire, the Elven scouts quickly locate the relics and reagents they came here for, but their presence has not gone unnoticed, as the Saurian inhabitants react violently to their intrusion. The forces of the Elves are led by Kalana Heartwale, the disgraced elf sorceress. She will be a high elven mage, and she leads 2 units of 3 warriors, one of which has spears and a sergeant, 3 elven elite with great swords, and 5 shadow brothers. The Saurian forces defending their homes and relics are led by the gecko priest Brask. He leads a unit of 3 geckos with javelins, jungle toxins and camouflage paint, a further unit of 3 geckos with blowpipes and camouflage paint, 5 Saurian warriors, and a mighty gator. The battlefield is set. I will of course be using the Age of Fantasy skirmish rules from One Page Rules. The core rules do come on one page, double-sided, but I'll be referring to the slightly more detailed booklet. The basic rulebook is available for free from the link in the description, along with army lists for all of your favourite fantasy or sci-fi armies. So check them out. Today's scenario will be a relic hunt. Both sides are looking to secure the nice and shiny objective markers in the centre of the board. Whomsoever secures the most shall be the victor. The Elves have deployed on the side closest to me, while the Saurians are deployed on the opposite side. The swamp itself is difficult terrain, with the islands being open terrain. The geckos with the Strider rule aren't bothered, but the other models will have to choose between moving slowly through the swamp or trying to leap from island to island. The bases of the trees will be used as a block to determine line of sight, just to keep things simple. With the admin out of the way, let's roll a dice to see who's going to take the first turn. Black die for the Elves and red die for the Saurians. Double sixes, that is not useful, try again. And we'll start with the Elves, rolling a mighty 3. However, before the first turn commences, the Elven Shadow Brothers get to make a special move because they have the Scout rule. They can move up to 12 inches, ignoring terrain, so 4 of them will rush up to cover and contest the swamp side of the board, while the remaining Shadow Brother rushes up on the left flank. The elf turn starts in typical elf fashion. One of the Shadow Brothers in the swamp looses an arrow at an approaching Saurian warrior. A quality test of 3+ results in a hit. The Saurian warrior now has a chance to defend, needing a 4+, but with a 3, the arrow sneaks over his shield and buries itself in the Saurian shoulder. We need a 6+ on a d6, adding the number of wounds a model has taken in order to remove it from the board, and with a 1, the Saurian is merely stunned. The Saurian warrior next to the one that went down leaps into action, bounding across to the next island and pushing up on the objective, but he's not yet close enough to contest it. The Shadow Brother, seeking to claim the first objective, tracks the swiftly moving Saurian and looses an arrow. It flies true, but the Saurian warrior catches it in his shield, snarling in defiance. The geckos in the swamp are alert to the shadowy elf scout and swiftly swim through the murky waters of the mire, preventing the Shadow Brother from snatching the prize. Aware of the difficulty of securing the swamp, the Shadow Brother on the shore adds his bow to the fray. He sends an arrow arcing over the swimming geckos towards the Saurian warrior. The Saurian is too slow this time, and the arrow drives itself deep into his chest. He lets out a low moan and sinks to the sodden ground. The wounded Saurian in the swamp clambers to its feet, shield arm held tightly to its side, the arrow protruding behind, drenching the warrior in blood. He growls in pain, then picks up his club, determined to put down that archer. The elf arrows continue to lance out, another Shadow Brother sending a shaft towards the Saurian warrior behind the gaiter. The shot is perfect, but the Saurian nimbly steps aside, well aware of the arrow's approach. The Saurian warriors begin to advance on the leftmost relic. The Shadow Brother backs up as the fearsome Saurian rushes down the hill and looses a hurried arrow. It's true, but the Saurian batters it aside with his shield. The push on the leftmost relic begins. The spear elves rush up.
Quickly!
A Saurian warrior moves to meet them, followed by the advance of the greatsword-wielding Elven elite. The gaiter lumbers up between the huts in the centre of the board as both sides pile in. The Elven elite on one side, a Saurian warrior on the other.
This shall be a test of my skill.
Another group of geckos move up, and they send out a volley of darts from their blowpipes towards the Shadow Brother in the swamp. Normally needing 5s to hit, they require 6s to hit the Shadow Brother because he has the stealth special rule. Elven warriors advance up the centre,
Swift as an eagle.
and Brask, the gecko priest, advances and attempts to blast the spear elves with the spell Serpent Egg, but requiring a 3 or more, the magic eludes him. Kalana rushes up to support the front line and spies the large form of the gaiter over the slope of the hill. With a 4+, she summons crackling white energy at the tip of her staff, and the quench spell launches forth towards the gaiter. Causing 6 automatic hits, the gaiter defends, requiring 3+. Most of the magical energies are foiled by the gaiter's thick hide, but it is still badly wounded, taking 2 out of the 3 wounds required to put the beast down. The first round complete. First blood goes to the Elves. Their shooting and magics proving a deadly combination, striking down one Saurian warrior, wounding another, and badly wounding the mighty gaiter. The next turn will see the Saurians in melee combat, where their primal brutality really shines. At this stage, all of the objectives are still contested. They each have a model from either side within 3 inches, so nobody can claim any at the end of the first round. On round 2, the Saurians act first, as the Elves had the final activation in the last round. They begin with the wounded gaiter, who bellows in rage and charges one of the Elven elite. Rolling 3 dice in the attack, with a quality of 4+, the gaiter lands 2 hits. His mighty strength reduces the Elf's defence from 5+ to the minimum of 6s, and the Elven elite swordsman takes the full force of the attack. With 2 wounds and the roll of a 4, his shattered body is thrown across the battlefield. Over by the leftward objective, the Elven elite charges one of the Saurian warriors.
Filthy creatures.
With a quality of 3+, he fails to hit, rolling a 1, and the Saurian warrior turns on him in a savage fury. Making 2 attacks, needing 4+, he rolls a 6, which gives him an additional attack due to the Predator rule. A 5 hits, and the elf is forced to defend himself. Needing 5+, he blocks one of the attacks, but the furious assault leaves him stunned. The Saurian doubles down on his advantage, immediately activates, and butchers the defenceless elf, automatically knocking out the stunned model. The spear elves charge in, too late to save their comrade, they strike out with 3 attacks,
Death comes for
quality
you.
4+, landing 2 hits.
Pathetic.
The Saurian deflects one spear tip with his shield, but the other penetrates his thigh, leaving him stunned. The Saurians continue their push on the centre objective, a Saurian warrior charging the Elven elite. 2 attacks result in 2 hits, plus an additional attack from the Predator rule that misses. The Elven elite is overwhelmed by the attack, unable to defend himself, and he falls down stunned.
Ah!
The inland Shadow Brother looses an arrow at the Saurian that's still standing, but fearing to hit his companions, the arrow goes wide. Brask focuses himself and causes a burst of serpentine energy among the spear elves, successfully casting Serpent Egg. Causing 4 automatic hits, the elves are caught unaware by the eruption of arcane energy. 2 are killed outright, while the remaining elf falls writhing to the ground. Kalana turns at the arcane explosion and attempts to drain the standing Saurian, but shocked by the number of fallen elves, her concentration is broken and the magic escapes her. The Saurian seizes his opportunity and falls upon the wounded elf spearman. One of the Shadow Brothers moves around the flank of the gator, taking a shot at the beast's side, but the arrow skips off the gator's thick hide. The geckos with javelins leap out of the swamp. Having trouble spotting the stealthy Shadow Brother, they elect to rush the archer. They make 3 attacks, requiring 5s. While most of the strikes are ineffective, a 6th lands and delivers its deadly poison to the elf. The poison causes 3 hits, and the elf is racked by the toxins, falling stunned to the ground before the geckos. Following on the heels of his friend, another Shadow Brother moves forward and takes a shot at the gator's flank. The arrow hits, but fails to penetrate deep enough to do any real damage. The geckos with blowpipes activate and blast their darts towards the writhing Shadow Brother on the swamp's island. Once again, they require 6s and their darts go wide. Seeing his comrade in trouble, the other Shadow Brother in the swamp looses an arrow towards the geckos. They're camouflaged and he receives a -1 to his roll. With a 2, the shot goes wide. The final Saurian to activate is the wounded Swamp Warrior, who rushes forward and attempts to leap to the next island. But distracted by the arrow in his shoulder, he slips and falls into the murky mire. The poisoned Shadow Brother clambers back to his feet, sweat proud on his forehead and skin pale and clammy. He nevertheless contests the right-hand objective.
You little monsters!
The fallen Elven elite rises to his feet, battered and bloodied by the Saurian's assault. He stands defiantly.
What is that stench?
Finally, the elf warriors throw themselves towards the wounded gator, determined to strike the creature
Come,
down.
Elves of Order!
They cut and thrust with their swords, requiring 4+. They land 2 hits. 1 slash is deflected by the armoured forearm, but a thrust bites deep into the gator's soft underbelly. Needing an 8 or more to dispatch the beast, the gator is momentarily stunned by the pain. At the end of round 2, the tide swiftly changed. The elves fell in droves before the Saurians. Between magic and raw Saurian fury, the left flank evaporated and the Saurians have claimed that objective. In the centre, the gator is in trouble, but the objective is still contested. On the right flank, the Saurians are looking rather dominant, but the elves are still contesting that objective, for now. The Saurians take the initiative again because the elves were the last to activate in the last round. They begin by activating the gator, who shakes his massive jaws and bellows at the elves surrounding him. The wounded Elven elite takes his chance.
Take this,
Half-swording his fine greatsword, he rams the steadied blade under the gator's ribs, the wickedly sharp steel penetrating the gator's hide with ease. With AP 2, the gator required 5s to defend. Twisting the sword, the elf drives all his weight behind it, burying the blade to the crossguard, piercing the gator's heart and lungs, before withdrawing the blade, the gator sinking to the ground. A Saurian warrior scoops up the leftmost relic and rushes back over the hill, denying the elves their prize. Frustrated by the Saurian warrior's escape, The inland Shadow Brother rushes forward and finishes the stunned Saurian with a quick dagger slash. The javelin-armed geckos fall upon the wounded Shadow Brother in the swamp, spitting the elf with their poison javelins. A whopping 6 hits due to the poison rule. The Shadow Brother has no chance of defending himself, and he falls to the diminutive reptiles. The Elven warriors call to each other around the tree before rushing forward and surrounding the Saurian warrior. Again their swords slash out. One misses. One's blocked by the Saurian's club, but the last lands a slash across the Saurian's back, and the creature falls stunned before them. It quickly recovers though, rising with a growl and keeping the elves from their objective. The remaining Shadow Brother in the swamp wades through the stagnant muck, moving no more than 6 inches before loosing an arrow point blank into the back of one of the geckos, instantly dropping it. The blowpipe geckos track his movements and send poison darts arcing across the swamp, but the elf passes through the fusillade unscathed. One of the Shadow Brothers near the centre objective sends an arrow towards the wounded Saurian. It passes over his shield and knocks the Saurian to the floor with the force of the impact. Brask moves between the huts and summons another serpentine explosion, this time among the elf warriors. The furthest warrior manages to block the spell with his shield, requiring 5s, but the closest 2 are struck down. The remaining Shadow Brother turns and looses towards the geckos on the island. The shot is good, and needing a 6 to defend, another gecko drops. The wounded Saurian swamp warrior grits his teeth against the pain and makes his way through the mire, moving a maximum of 6 inches in the difficult terrain. Kalana Heartwale is the last model to activate. She sprints up the hill after the retreating Saurian and attempts to cast Drain. Requiring a 3, she's unable to focus the energies required, and the spell fizzles.
At the end of round 3, the Saurians have managed to escape, so far, with one of the relics, while the Elves have managed to seize the middle one. The relic in the swamp is still up for grabs, hotly contested for the time being. With 1 turn left, it's still anybody's game.
Stay back. I know elf karate.
The Saurians take the initiative again. The warrior with the relic sprints for cover, diving behind the bole of the tree. The remaining elf warrior rushes forward and dispatches the fallen Saurian with a lightning-quick sword thrust. The wounded Saurian swamp warrior rises from the mire and falls upon the Shadow Brother in the swamp. 2 attacks, followed by a 3rd due to Predator, overwhelm the elf, who's forced to the ground. He quickly recovers though, desperate to keep the Saurians from the relic, and making himself no easy prey for the gecko, who leaps forward cautiously. The gecko's thrust goes wide, and the elf's return strike is short of his target, who quickly scrambles back out of reach. The wounded elven elite scoops up his prize and makes a run back over the hill towards safety. The blowpipe geckos dive beneath the surface of the swamp, swimming forward and emerging to blow darts towards the Shadow Brother, stubbornly fighting off their kin. One of the darts finds its mark, the potent poison quickly overwhelming the wounded elf.
Oh, that's not fair.
Seeing his brother fall, one of the Shadow Brothers on the bank leaps into the swamp and wades his way towards the relic, just close enough to contest it. He looses an arrow towards the remaining camouflage gecko, but the arrow goes wide. Brask falls back to defend the captured relic. Spying Kalana upon the crest of the hill, he lobs the magical energies of a serpent egg spell towards her. She feels the twisting of the magical weave and quickly enacts a counter-charm. Requiring 6s to succeed, she unravels the serpentine spell, but drains her own mystic reserves for the time being. Knowing she can no longer catch the running Saurian, she screams out in frustration. With just the 2 landward Shadow Brothers left, the Elves make a last-ditch effort to claim the swamp relic. The furthest elf lets his arrow fly, but the arrow skims past the Saurian he aimed at and lands with a plop in the swamp. The final Shadow Brother moves along the bank and sends an arrow towards the gecko. The shot is on target despite the gecko's camouflage, and it catches the gecko by surprise, knocking him off his feet. And that is round 4. Both sides ended up 1 unit away from having to start taking morale checks, and both forces managed to secure an objective. One for the Elves, and one for the Saurians. The final relic, however, remains contested, so this skirmish has resulted in a draw. So, not the resounding success Kalana was hoping for after the altercation with the Dwarves, but at least she's got something. Now she just needs to make it back to the ships and hope that those repairs have been completed swiftly. We'll see. What about the rules? I thought they worked really well. They are nice and simple, very easy to learn. I got so engrossed in them that I forgot to take photos throughout the video, as you will have noticed. They've got a huge variety of different army lists with all sorts of special rules suitable for all sorts of different models, and the best part about them is they are free. You can pick up the basic rules and all the army booklets and everything from the website in the description below. The models are absolutely gorgeous. They are very nicely detailed, and they were the first models that I have ever printed on a resin 3D printer, and they came out perfectly. They were super easy to do. I was really impressed. If you need some of those models in your life, you can check out their store on My Mini Factory, or for the best bang for your buck, check out their Patreon. I was super impressed, so I literally made up a Patreon account to sign up with them. All of the links are in the description below. Anywho, I do hope that you have enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. I am looking forward to continuing this campaign, so thank you very much for watching. Anyway, we shall see you all next time. Cheers!